All right, class. First off, as always, good day. I'm glad you're here. So, as you can tell from the screen right there, we're starting a new section. We went through everything from the beginning of our country all the way to the Mexican American War. And the main issue that's been plaguing the country up until this point was slavery. Now we get to the point of where we're basically going to have to fight to decide whether to keep slavery or to get rid of it. Okay. Now, before we begin, though, we have to talk about a certain person, and that is my boy, Abraham Lincoln. Now, we're going to analyze the path that Lincoln took to become president of the United States. We're examining the legend of Honest Abe. Was he really honest? Was this a nickname that he gave himself, or did he really earn it? Okay. And then we're going to create an argument on whether Lincoln would have gotten where he got to if it wasn't for his stepmother's support. Now, here's this warm-up picture. So that's a picture of depiction of young Abraham Lincoln. So my question to you is this: how is this artist trying to depict him? How are they trying to show him? Represent him. Okay, so look at his clothing. Look what he has on him. In his hands and stuff like that. And tell me, how is this artist trying to portray him? You know, So again, look what he has, look what he's dressed in and things like that. And are they trying to make him look like a preppy person? Trying to make him look like like a basically a saint. I mean, what do you think? Okay, so think about it, write your response. Okay, pause the video because we're moving on in three, two, one. So Abraham Lincoln was born February 12th, 1809, in Hardin County, Kentucky. Now, Hardin County doesn't exist anymore. It's now called LaRue County. Okay. His parents were Thomas Lincoln, and his mother's name was Nancy Hanks. Now, here's the thing, you might realize that last name, Hanks, that sounds familiar. Well, there's an actor we have named Tom Hanks. And believe it or not, Tom Hanks is a blood resident or related, sorry, to Abraham Lincoln. They are blood related. Now, he's not a direct blood relation, but basically Nancy Hanks, she had a brother, and that is Tom Hanks's like great 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 grandpa. You know, so there is a relation, but it's not a direct blood relation. He's not like that's Lincoln's great great grandpa. No, 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 no. Okay, but they are pretty, you know, share some blood. Okay. Now, Lincoln's family were frontiersmen. Basically, what that was is people going out into the wilderness and saying, you know what, this is a great piece of land to settle on. So they would clear the brush, chop down trees, make a home out of it, basically turn that forest land into farmland. It took a lot of work, to get all the rocks and all this stuff out and to basically get the soil fertile enough to be able to plant on it. Now, here's the thing, a lot of politicians tried to say, oh, I'm from a log cabin family, you know, but they didn't. A lot of them were from rich families, middle class. Lincoln was a log cabin uh, person. He was raised in that. So and these log cabins are not like the log cabins we have nowadays. In the woods where they're nice and air conditioned and things like that. No, these were very just put together. Um, because again, the thing is, they was out in the middle of nowhere. And these wood structures, the log cabins, they would have holes in there in between where cold air can go through and things like that. So they have to like stuff it with like mud or whatever they could, you know. And the floor was made of dirt, So things, it wasn't like nice. It was pretty bad, again, from the gutter, from the bottom. Now, here's the thing. If you're a frontiersman and you basically got this plot of land and you made it your own, you would then have to file a claim saying, I own this property. I did all this stuff to it, things like that. Well, thing is, in states where there was slavery going on, a lot of time these plantation owners were like, "I want that land because hey, somebody's already done all the hard work," and a lot of these guys had money to spare, so they would, kind of pay off these government officials to lose the paperwork, and so now people like Lincoln's dad couldn't live there. And even though they're like, hey, no, no, I did the paperwork, that's my land. Well, sorry, we don't have any paperwork. It's gone. You know, maybe it wasn't filed or whatever BS reason they could come up with. And then these plantation owners would then say, oh, I buy it. I have the money. Here you go. So, yeah. So Lincoln's dad didn't like slavery because of that. It basically gave money to the plantation owners, and then they in turn did corrupt things. you know. So he basically Lincoln's dad said, we're moving from Kentucky to Indiana, where there was no slavery. Now in 1818, Lincoln's mom died from milk sickness. This doesn't really apply anymore because the thing is, we now know about things like germs. We know about pasteurization, how to clean milk and things like that. But back then, they didn't know that stuff. And you could really get sick from drinking raw milk. And Lincoln's mom did, and she died because of it. Now, Lincoln's dad is sad, that his wife died, but it's not going to hold him down. He eventually remarries, like a year, 2 years later, to a lady named Sarah Bush Johnston. Now, she is um, not wealthy, wealthy, but she has some money. And the thing is, she's educated. Now, Lincoln's dad is illiterate. And if you don't know the meaning of that word, basically somebody who can't read. And chances are, if they can't read, they can't write that well. So, yeah, things were pretty bad. And the thing is, Lincoln's dad saw no value in education. He was like, why are you sitting there? That's a waste of time. You should be outside working, you know, planting, plowing, picking the fruit, vegetables, whatever it is, chopping down trees, making something with that wood, a chair, a table, something. So his dad was always about work, 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 you know. Now, his stepmother, though, on the other hand, she saw that Lincoln really wanted to learn. She saw that fire in his eye about wanting to learn and expand his mind and things like that. So, what she did is she actually borrowed books for him. She got him some books, borrowed books, and, you know, let him read. So, the picture you see there, that's a great illustration of basically how Lincoln was. The day he was outside working with his dad, and at nighttime he's by the campfire reading a book. Okay. Now, thing is, Lincoln's dad was a brutal man, very harsh. Lincoln was already pretty tall and lengthy, but his dad, whenever he thought, hey, he's not pulling his weight, he would, hit him and things like that and tell him, hey, come on, you could do more than that. Oh, come on. You're not even pulling your full weight. And so Lincoln's just knew all about hard work, and also too, Lincoln basically realized too, if I'm getting beat and treated like this, can you imagine the slaves how they're being treated? And so he just realized, like, you know what, these guys are going through worse than me. So this is where the hatred towards slavery really, really begins. Now, going back to his dad. If his dad saw him reading that book like that in the picture you see there, he'd be shouting at him, "Why are you reading that book? You should be working. You should be doing this or that." And his stepmom would step in and goes, "No, he's been with you from sun up to sundown. Nighttime is his time, and if he wants to read a book, that's his, choice." So his stepmom really, backed them up in learning and reading and things like that. Now, Lincoln, when he got a little bit older, he got a job selling things on a flatboat. A flatboat was basically these, uh, like a bunch of wood tied together, like a little raft, basically. And they would have supplies on there, fruits, vegetables, whatever, maybe, you know, and they would travel down the Mississippi River. And along the way, they would stop off at places, sell things, and whatever they didn't sell, they would sell it all in New Orleans and then walk all the way back up to Indiana. Now, here's the thing. On one of these trips, Lincoln and his friend, they're by like the Bay Area, right? They're sleeping, things like that, and a runaway slave approaches them. And he's basically telling him, "Give me your boat." Now, the thing is, Lincoln and the guy basically are like, "Hey, you're a runaway slave, huh?" The guy's like, "Yeah." They tell him, "Hey, this boat goes downstream. It's going to the south. There's no point of taking this boat because you're just going to lose the time and between when you're trying to go north, you're going right back down to the south. Streams don't go north, they go south." And the guy realizes, you know what, he's right. So he leaves Lincoln and his friend. Imagine if that guy had killed Lincoln, how history would have changed. And it would have changed drastically for our country, you know. So I mean, one little moment in time could have altered history completely. So Lincoln goes to New Orleans, sell all the stuff. He walks back to Indiana to find his parents basically all packed up and ready to move again. His dad's like, "Hey, let's go." He tells his dad, "Dad, I'm not going with you." Now, the dad is furious. He basically tells him, "Why? Why not? Why aren't you coming with us?" And Lincoln tells him, "Dad, farming is not for me. It's an honorable job. It's a good job for people to have, but I want something more out of my life." And his dad just erupts, basically telling him, "Don't be asking me for money. Don't be asking me for help. Don't be asking me for anything." Lincoln basically says, "Okay, Dad." His dad goes off one way and Lincoln goes the other way. Now, Lincoln eventually settles in this town called New Salem. It doesn't exist anymore. The state of Illinois actually recreated the town, but it's not like you can stay there. It's just like a dummy town. Now, like I told you, Lincoln was used to working from sun up to sundown. So he had that workman mentality. And the thing is, he works a lot of jobs. The most important job, the most one that gets him a lot of attention, is a store clerk. Okay. Then he actually works as chopping down wood. See, the thing is, Lincoln in some movies like Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter, they show him as a strong guy chopping down a tree with one swipe. Well, there is some truth to that. Lincoln was very strong. I know it doesn't look like it in this picture here, but he's immensely strong. I mean, he's like ripped. He's thin, but he's muscle. And that's the kind of thing that helps him out because he ends up being a local wrestling champion. He's the only president in our US history to be in the Wrestling Hall of Fame. Now, as I said earlier, at the job as a store clerk, Lincoln is known for being honest about things. People might be wanting to buy something, and Lincoln's like, "Hey, you know what? We're actually gonna get a supply like next week. You should really hold off on buying that because then the price is gonna drop, stuff like that." If someone asked him about like what he thought about something, he would tell them straight honestly, "I don't think you should do that because this and that, whatever it may be." He's not like telling people like, "Oh, you're stupid if you do that. Come on, are you an idiot?" He's not condescending. He's not um rude. When he's telling the truth, he says it with tact, with some, finesse, and not, you know, as some students try to say, "Oh, he's being brutally honest." There is a difference between rude and honesty. There is a difference, you know. So just because you're honest doesn't mean you have to be rude. And that's what Lincoln was. He was not rude at all. He was very honest and told people what he thought. So he earns the nickname Honest Abe. Now, Um, some Native Americans were causing some issues with some settlers, and the Black Hawk War ended up happening. So he signed up, and his men basically were like, this guy is pretty cool. He speaks well, things like that. So they nominate him as their captain because they felt, hey, we can follow this guy. He knows if he says to do something, it's for our best interest, and he really cares. So people liked him. Now, once that's finished, he runs for state legislature in 1832 and he loses. But 2 years later, he runs again for the Illinois House of Representatives and he wins. Now, basically 2 years after that, he starts his lawyer, business. And the thing is, Lincoln did not go to one day of law school. Basically, his friend Joshua Speed, if I remember his name right, basically told him, "Hey, you want to be a lawyer? Here, read this book. You should read this book about Supreme Court cases and things like that. You should really check out this book. It's about all these court cases, in the state level and things like that. La la la." So Lincoln never went to law school, but he taught himself the law. What it says in the Constitution, the Supreme Court decisions, and things like that. And yeah, a student asked me in class, so can you still do that? Can you be a lawyer without going to law school? Technically, yes. It really, really helps if you go to law school, but you got to take the bar exam, which is, not an easy exam. Here in the state of California, it's a 2-day part exam. You got the multiple choice questions and things like that on one day, and then the written part the second day. And that one, you're going to like, you're given a scenario, and then it's like, how would you win this case? What court cases? What presidents? What's part of the law? What constitution? What might amendment might you use? So yeah, you could, but you got to know your stuff. Now, in 1846, Lincoln runs for the House of Representatives and he wins. And this is the point where I said in the last lesson how Lincoln stood up to the president, President Polk, and demanded that he show them where exactly were American soldiers killed by Mexican soldiers. Okay. Now, this is another one of my favorite stories. It's called the Lost Speech because the thing is, at this one speech, Lincoln's giving is a very elegant and just masterful speech that people are just enthralled with him. They're just like, oh, my God, look at the language he's using and his tone and everything was just perfect. Now, like I said, there was about 1,000 people and like 40 reporters. Everyone's just captivated by what he's saying and the way he's saying it, the words and stuff like that. That later on, when there were people were like, "Oh my God, did you go to Lincoln's speech? Oh, it was amazing. It was wonderful. It was great. Awesome. What did he say?" People forgot because they were so enthralled by the way he was talking and things like that, that specifics of the speech really didn't set in people's heads. And even the reporters forgot to write down what he was saying because they were just like, wow, this guy can speak. Now, Lincoln, when he gets older, he would wear the top hat, right? And that top hat is where he kept the speeches when he, was going to talk. And then afterwards, he would put it back in his hat. But he didn't wear the hat at this time. He would just put it in his pocket. Well, he lost it. So nobody really knows what the speech was about. But everyone agrees it was beautiful. It was amazing. Now, Lincoln is known for his coolness, calmness, and things like that. But when he heard about the Dred Scott case, this really lit a fire in him. Basically, what happened was this: Dred Scott was a former slave, well, was a slave, and then his owner basically said, "Okay, we're going to move into this free state." So they moved into the free state. Now, Dred Scott was like, "Hey, I'm free now, right? You brought me here into this free territory. I've established residence and things like that, so I'm free." The owner's like, "Hey, just stay with me until I die. You know I'm gonna die soon. I know I'm gonna die soon, so just stay with me till then." So he's like, "Okay." So the owner eventually dies. He Dred Scott goes with the owner's body back to the slave state, buries the man. And then when Dred Scott's like, okay, I'll see you guys later, the guy's family's like, where are you going? He's like, going back home. I'm a free man now. And they're like, you're not free. You're our property. And he goes, no, 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 no. Under the law, I am free. They're like, nope, you're ours. So he sues them. They go to court, and basically everyone's like, okay, he's going to go free because, again, that's what the law says. But the Supreme Court is very pro slavery, meaning they like slavery. And they basically dropped down a court ruling that just irritated the hell out of Lincoln. Basically, what they said was all, not just Dred Scott, but all slaves that have escaped are technically still property of their owners. So it doesn't matter if they've been free for 1 minute or for 10 years. Doesn't matter. You are still that person's property. So a lot of black people were just so upset, but Lincoln was furious. He's like, how could they rule that when the law clearly says this and that? So Lincoln was upset, livid, angry, and he decides to run for a Senate seat against this other guy, Stephen A. Douglas. Now, here's the thing: Douglas is for the Dred Scott case. He thought it was a great decision, things like that. Lincoln's like, no, slavery needs to go away, and things like that. So now they're both running for the Senate seat, and they start clashing. They have 6 debates, and people are selling tickets to this thing, right? Now, Lincoln, like I said, talks very elegantly, very proper, you know, well, very, very, very well. Stephen Douglas, though, this guy, Lincoln's 6'4", speaks so great. Stephen Douglas is like 5'2", short, stout guy, and he's fire and brimstone and using his hands and such angry voice and things like that. He's very energetic, very captivating, and his usage of words is very low. It's not like you, me, win, nothing like that. But it's not as proper and as elegant as Lincoln. So people who are not, don't know English that well, their vocabulary isn't as extensive. They kind of understood more of what Douglas was saying, but they loved the way Lincoln was talking, because the way he spoke. Um, so they went at it toe to toe. Ends up being Lincoln won the popular vote, but he didn't win the electoral college, so he lost. Now, I told you guys before, Lincoln got a lot of national news for standing up to the president, President Polk, about the Mexican American War. Now that he had those 6 speeches with Douglas and showed the country that he is anti slavery and he speaks so well, and wow, just a great speaker. Um, the Republican Party comes to him and say, hey, we would like for you to run for president of the United States as a Republican. And Lincoln says yes. So on November 6th, 1860, he wins. Now, here's the thing: Lincoln's not officially president yet. He's the president elect. He hasn't taken the oath of office yet. And already there's some states that are talking about leaving the United States just because Lincoln won as president. Excuse me. So, using what you've already know, do you think the Civil War was inevitable or could it have been avoided? Now, if you don't know what the word inevitable means like it's going to happen. There's no way around it. It's something that's going to happen. It's destined. It's just there it is. There's no way around it. Or do you think it could have been avoided? Because up to this point, what we've been talking about in class is that they've been switching between free slave states, free slave, free states, slave states, and they're trying to keep a balance, trying to keep everyone happy. So my question to you is that was it going to happen no matter what? A war is going to have to be fought to basically decide to keep slavery or to get rid of it? Or do you think that we could have played that little balancing beam game more, and we could have gone through the whole up to now without fighting about slavery. What do you think? What do you believe? Okay, now the writing prompts on the bottom. Okay, so be sure to use those words inevitable or avoided. So I think the Civil War was inevitable. All right, or you put I think the Civil War could have been avoided because, and explain. Okay, so once you finish this question, you're done with this lesson. So hopefully you learned something new. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Um, so with that being said, guys, you take care, you be safe, and I'll see you guys later, okay?